Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about preparing the next generation for the technological society they'll live in as adults. My guest is Marc Prensky, well-known futurist in the field of education. Marc is the founder of the Global Future Education Foundation. He's written 7 books on education. He's an internationally acclaimed speaker who's lectured in over 40 countries. He's taught school at every grade level from elementary school to college. He has an MBA degree with distinction from Harvard and a Master of Arts degree in teaching from Yale. He was also the first person to coin the term digital native. Marc, welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
Marc, what do you think our schools should be doing for the future that they're not doing now?
I think that we need to change the model because the world has changed and the kids have changed. And so what we really want to do is not teach a set of fixed subjects like we did in the past, worked in the past. Now we have to let kids accomplish things and learn through their accomplishments how to accomplish even further to make the world a better place.
So do you mean schools should be like an apprenticeship where they learn actual physical skills that they can use when they grow up?
In a sense, yes, it's a 21st century apprenticeship. It's a modern way of, instead of, if you wanted to build a house, for example, instead of taking a course for 2 or 3 years to learn how to build a house, you could start by building the house and in each step learn what you need to learn and do it, and then you would go through the process much more successfully and faster.
Now, is this specific to the technological age? Might this advice not have been good in any previous age, that school should be a place where you learn to do useful things?
It was for most of history, and then the academics managed to hijack K-12 education. So K-12 education has become an apprenticeship for being an academic. We teach kids, even youngest kids, to footnote.
And being an academic is not necessarily the most productive thing you can be in today's society.
We need some academics because they're the people who invent new knowledge, but we don't need everybody to be an academic. In fact, most people won't be academics.
We're going to continue this, but I believe you brought a few images to illustrate some of the things you're working on. So we're going to show these and discuss them. So could we see that first image, please?
The reason I put this image in is because the root of the educational problems of today is really that we have different kids in a different world. We all want our kids to be educated, but what's changing is what a good education is and what being educated means. And the goalposts are changing from improving individuals to making the world a better place.
Now this kid looks like he is practicing for space flight. He's in that free fall airplane, so he's floating weightless in space. The kids say they need to start preparing for space travel.
I'm sure my 14-year-old will go to space, and he definitely wants to. And the interesting thing is you can do that as anything. You can do that as a psychologist, you can do that as a pilot, you could do that as a researcher, but it's not going to be confined anymore to planet Earth. And we used to know what's best for these kids because the world was going to be more or less the same going forward. But now, because the world is going to be so different, we really don't know what's best for these kids, and we have to experiment.
Okay, and let's look at the next slide, please.
So the important thing is to start seeing our kids differently. We used to see them as trains on tracks at best and put them on fast or slow tracks, or we used to see them at worst as pets and tell them what to do and what tricks to perform and when to roll over. And we focused on learning, but now we have to focus on the ends of learning. Learning is a means, not an end. The end is making the world better in some way.
So this idea of a network, it looked like in that slide, kids are networking, they're behind their computer screens, but also on the computer screens. Does that imply that we're all going to be part of some huge computerized network in which everybody is like a little cell in that massive network?
We already are, and what we're learning as humans for the very first time is how to behave as nodes on a network. So when a teacher looks out at kids in a room or students of any age, they used to see people that were little them when they were small. Now what they really should be seeing is people who are extended in their capabilities and who have the capabilities of being all networked together.
So we're going to be spending more of our time in cyberspace in the future, as much time in virtual space as in physical space?
I think that we will, and I think that we will become, and we're learning to become, as quickly as possible, symbiotic human-machine hybrids, because these capabilities are arriving. That's why the kids are so engrossed in their phones and don't want to give them up, because they're actually becoming like a new hand, like a new piece of your body. And you wouldn't tell kids to just put their hands away. We don't need to tell them to put their other capabilities away.
Okay, let's take a look at the next image, please.
So the kids are already starting to integrate these tools into their bodies, and I see that as coming very, very quickly, and something just like kids pierce their ears or get tattoos, they will have chips that do many things in their bodies.
Now, what will the chip do? Right now, you can put a chip in your dog, and if it gets lost, somebody can scan the chip and return the dog.
Well, a chip can do everything that your phone can do right now. A chip is just a computer, and now we put them in our pockets, but soon we can put them in other places. You can have it built in your wrist to look at. And the reason that's important is that machines have already gotten better at many things that humans were traditionally good at, like reading and writing and accessing information and researching and translating and collaborating, learning, even grit and agility. And that's already here.
Do you see a time when people will be required to have such chips, and they'll be used as a means of control, like the government knows everything about you at every moment because they're reading the chips from a distance?
Well, the downside is that there's plenty of dystopian scenarios. They make for good adventure stories. So, but the trick that we have to go through, and the period we're going through, is to figure out how to live in this world successfully and not like the Matrix.
Okay, let's take a look at the next image, please.
So what this illustrates is that kids really are doing things that improve their world, and they want to improve their world. They have always seen problems. There are problems everywhere, and kids will always see a problem. If you ask a kid, where's a problem, they'll tell you. What's different now is that kids have agency, that they can do something about problems because they have the tools. So small groups can make a big difference in the world. And as an example, a class, for example, a fourth grade class in the Midwest was heard that they wanted a water park in their town, and there was an RFP for a water park. And the kid said, "It's our water park, we'll design it." And they did. They made their designs, they lobbied the city council, they got their designs accepted, and the builders built their designs. That's totally new.
The speed of communication also enables just one person to reach the whole world instantly. If they say something that, like there's this 15-year-old girl from Sweden who became the world's leading spokesman of climate change. Before the internet, that would not have been possible.
That's right, and it starts really early. If you wanted to, we've all done surveys in class when we were little kids, and the teacher said, survey the class find out who has what opinion. And you could survey 30 kids or however many were in your class. Now that same teacher can say to that same third or fourth grader, survey the world, come back with 1 million opinions. Go use SurveyMonkey, it's already on your phone. So the scale of what they can do is really different. And for Greta, the next step, what I want to see, is not just that she comes and makes the world aware and that she comes to the UN and berates the adults. I want to see that they actually start taking action. So they did a one-day strike. My sense is, let's strike, and we won't go back to school until things get better. And while we're out of school, by the way, we're going to organize into groups and we're going to take actions.
Okay, and we'll see how effective that turns out to be. It's easier said than done, but hopefully things will happen. Let's take a look at the next slide.
So this is something that I coined as the new ABC loop. I'm trying to think about what the new basics are for the future of education. And because it's so much about accomplishment and bettering your world, we want to just continue doing that. So we have accomplishment, better your world, continue, accomplish, better your world, and continue. And in order to do that, we need to treat kids as capable people, not as pets. We don't have to give them a pet food curriculum, which is essentially what we give them today. We've got to think of the education as a process of empowering the kids, which leads to accomplishment, which leads to impact on the world, which leads to a better world.
But you still have to have the basic skills. They still need to know how to read and write. They still have to know how to do math. Maybe they should know something about the history of the country they live in, or how we got to where we are today.
I think all those skills, which have been important, will continue to be important, but they will be, in a sense, they're temporary. Reading and writing are both machine skills, and in 20 years, if you don't think about tomorrow or the next day or the day after, but you think about the day after tomorrow, reading and writing in any language is something you can do today with your phone. So if you wanted to read Chinese, you could point it and read it. It would read it to you in English. And if you wanted to write something, it's much easier to have your machine write it. So those skills that were useful in the past are less useful now that the machine parts of you are doing them. So what do you need to know? I have an acronym called LEGO. Love, empathy, gratitude, optimism.
I think we have a slide for that. Next slide. There we go.
Love, empathy, gratitude, optimism. I would love to see all our kids filled with that and getting more of it every day, rather than getting more math, English, science, and social studies, which I call the mess.
Now we talk about love and optimism. We live in a world where a lot of people don't like each other, where kids, they might have to go fight at some point in their life. Do they need to be prepared for that possibility as well?
I think aggression is built into humans, and our problem in terms of becoming a society that works together and solves the bigger problems and challenges that we have, like climate change, like going to space, like all these things. The problem is, how do we overcome those aggressive tendencies, or how do we put them or channel them in useful directions so that we can all work together?
Because we're building technology which is very useful, but technology is very easy to weaponize. Some people say that technology is the biggest threat we face, because before all this technology, we didn't have the ability to blow up the world.
I don't agree with those people. I think people have been fighting forever. I think that you can take whatever technology it is. Look at fire. Fire can be, and still is, incredibly destructive, but without fire we couldn't be human beings. So, or the human beings we are today. So that while every technology may have its good side and its bad side, what we have to learn to do is focus on and exploit the good side.
Okay, can we see the next slide, please?
So the message of this slide is that our kids are empowered, and that's really my big message. And we need not to train them or push them down or put them in seats. We need to unleash these kids. They're going to live in a world where their accomplishments are much more important than their credentials, and everything that we do should empower them further to better their world.
Are we going to have a very competitive society where I want to make sure that my accomplishments are more important than anybody else's accomplishments? I want to be number one and everyone else can be number two. Is that going to go away, or are we still going to have the intense competition?
We have a lot of people in the world. I grew up with 2 billion people. Now there are 8 billion, and it may go higher. And so there is going to be competition in many places. But I try to distinguish between achievement, which is where you rank people and somebody gets to the top and then you have to fight really hard, and accomplishment, where a group of people do something that makes the world better. Well, there are so many problems and there are so many things the world needs that we're not going to run out of this. And I think we have plenty of space for everybody to follow their own dreams and interests and passions and skills, to pick the area that they care about and improve the world.
Okay, I think we have one more slide. Can we see that last slide, please?
So this is about, why aren't we doing this? And if you look there, you see those creatures who are on the mountain. they represent what I think the older generation, that includes myself and possibly you.
They missed the arc.
They miss the arc and they say, oh crap, was that today? They're unprepared for the future because we are the last pre-internet generation the world will ever know. So we come from a different world. And unless we let go of that world, we will never help our kids get to the future. We will just keep pulling them back into our world.
Are we even qualified to lead them into the future? Maybe they can find their own way into the future, and we're more of a hindrance than a help.
Often that's the case. But the interesting part is that it's not that we have nothing to offer them. We have a whole civilization, the history of civilization to offer them. The question is, how do we blend that and not insist that that's everything, but listen to what's coming for the future so that they get to move forward. And the trick there is just don't stand in their way.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that you were put in charge of a school district. You can do whatever you want. What changes would you start to make in this school district?
The thing that I would like to see most is a separate track or time or occasion, or maybe even separate school, where kids do real-world projects as their education. One project after another project after another project, and we measure those on the measurable positive impact they make in the world.
I think that's called, or was called, vocational education. So when I was in high school, I was academic track, but kids took wood shop, they took auto shop. Is that the kind of practical stuff you mean?
Well, it is. Those were two things happened with those. One, they were directed toward very specific professions and skills, and two, they were always seen as second class. Right? Academic was always the top. What I want to see is an academic track, because we still need it and want it for some kids, but mostly an accomplishment track where kids learn to get things done in the world, where they learn if they have a dream, they can build a team and change the world, where they become capable people for the future, which is even more important because so much is going to be done by machines.
Do all the teachers need to be retrained so they can impart this approach to the students?
I think they do. I think there will be some teachers who will continue to do the academics from the past, and we need those teachers. But if we're going to move to the future, we're going to need other kinds of skills, more like coaching skills from the adults who are with the kids. Teaching is no longer the same thing when everything is online that you were about to teach. So what you really want to do, if you are the adult in charge of raising kids, which is what the teacher is to say, okay, tell me your dreams. My job is to help you get there. And we can take it step by step, and I'll show you all the things to get. But you should know as a student that where you are headed is a direction that you personally want to go.
Now, if we say that the goal is to make the world better, that's a little bit abstract. Should we have more narrowly focused goals? Some professions require enormous concentration and discipline. For example, designing microprocessor chips, very little room for error. So will this new education be very demanding and very intolerant of mistakes or any kind of slackness?
The issue is really, what do you want to do? Somebody who really wants to design computer chips will go and do all the work and all the intense things that it takes to become a good computer chip designer. Somebody who wants to be a tennis player will not care at all about computer chips. And I think we'll have the best world when each person is motivated by doing what they do for a purpose that they care about, that also serves the world.
Do we need to teach children to learn how to learn? Is learning itself an art that can be taught and mastered? Because some kids regurgitate things by rote, but they don't really know how to integrate new information, read a book and integrate that information in their overall mindset. Is learning itself a skill that you have to acquire?
It may be, but I think we've gone way off the deep end and off the edge on that. I don't think that learning is what school should be about. I think school should be about accomplishment and about getting things done. Now, you can't do that without learning particular things, but those things don't have to be taught to everybody. They're taught to individuals as they need them, or they don't even have to be taught because they can be watched on YouTube or found in other places.
Now, will this approach affect the grade structure? Right now, it's kind of lockstep. Everyone in the first grade class graduates to the second grade class. Will this approach, where everybody works on what's of interest to them, sort of get rid of the whole concept of different grade levels?
Or, as other people put it, grouping kids by date of manufacture, which the answer is it could, because there are already many places that are grouping kids by interests, grouping kids by projects, not by age, and that have multi-ages. And guess what? That's the way every workplace is. Every single workplace is multi-age. It's really artificial to say we're going to take this cohort and then you're going to be this cohort and we're going to do that. And that was just really an artifact of not having much money.
Now, what about social skills? Do you think that schools are the place to teach social skills, or should that be presumed to be the parents' responsibility? How to talk to people, how to make friends with people, how to make a favorable impression?
Social skills are most important in teams and groups and obviously families. And so all of those places you need to learn to be effective. These days there are people who manage to do very well. Some of them are programmers, some of them are other people, without communicating even by voice. I hired a guy once, people didn't think he talked, although he talks perfectly well. But for most people, the idea is not so much communication like we can talk to each other, it's functioning well with other people in a team to get something done in whatever role that you are playing at that moment.
Now, the educational system is a big bureaucracy. Bureaucracies tend to be very resistant to change because change means that some people will lose their jobs. How do you bring about changes against this bureaucracy that just resists everything you might want to do?
It is like a human body that has antibodies against almost any kind of change, and it's a very interesting and curious thing that this system that was set up not that many years ago, a couple hundred years ago, really took over the entire world, this academic type of education. So there are two ways to change it. One way is you can sort of go little by little and make changes to it. You could take 20% one day a week and do something different, or you could do something every other month or every other semester. But I'm increasingly thinking that the real way to do this is an end run, is that the only way to do it is to say there is a choice. You can send your kid, if you're a parent, or if you're a kid, you can go to an academic school and you can sit there all day, and as my kid who goes to a very fine school here in Palo Alto says, it's prison. He can't get out of his seat, he can't do anything he wants to do. And then he comes home and he flies his airplanes on his computer simulator. And there he'll sit in his seat and we can't get him out of his seat to go to bed because he's so passionate about doing that. And if we only had a system that said, okay kids, be really passionate about something that you're interested in, form teams, and get something done, get something measurably impactful accomplished, I think we could do much better for our kids.
Now, some kids have strong passions, they know what they want to do. Some kids are not sure. If you say, what is your passion? They'll say, well, I don't know. So what do you do with kids who don't exhibit a strong passion? Do you try to steer them? Well, we need more people in this profession, so let's steer people in that direction.
I don't think so. I think you dig. I think you go in and talk to people. One of the easiest questions to ask a kid is, what do you watch on YouTube? So just by asking that question, you can get a sense of what they're interested in. I call them, when I ask kids and they give me the response they don't know, I say, okay, you're a passion seeker. It's really important that you find it out. And so whether you dig deep in yourself or you go get a lot of new experiences to see what clicks with you, you really need to find your passion. Also, go back to your dreams. I have never met a kid in the world without dreams. And those dreams are often crushed immediately. How could you possibly be an astronaut? How could you possibly, be whatever it is that you think you want to be? And my friend Esther has a wonderful quote in her book written by one of her students. And it says, "She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted." And that kid went on to a successful acting career.
Do you think that schools have limited resources? Do you think resources should be focused more on the brightest kids with the most potential, or more on making sure that the slower kids don't fall too far behind? In limited resources, where do you put your focus?
We are completely wasting almost all of the resources that we put into education. We're spending a lot of it on testing, we're spending a lot of it on ranking, we're spending a lot of it on trying to perpetuate a system that we don't need anymore. And the reason we're doing that is we don't have an alternative yet. But as soon as people start realizing, which is happening around the world, that there is a better alternative for kids, and a better alternative for teachers, and a better alternative at the same time for parents, then I think we will start to see some switching of resources.
Do you think we need to create a culture in which it's expected that proper behavior means you encourage people and not discourage them? So if you discourage people by telling them what they can't do, that means that you're not really with it, you're the oddball.
We spend a lot of time in class discouraging our kids. We say the kid comes in and he says, "I want to be a basketball star." And the first response is, well, not very many people become basketball stars, and so the chances of you doing that are very slim. But what I would say to the kid is, do you want to be a basketball star like Steph Curry because you love basketball, or because you want the money he has, right, and the fame he has? Well, if you love basketball, there are a million directions you can go. A basketball team has 300 employees. It has coaches, it has trainers, it has agents, it has all these things. So if you want to be in basketball, you don't have to be a star. There are many ways. But if you want to make money, go to business school.
Okay, sounds good. And we're going to have to wrap now because we're out of time. I'd like to thank my guests, Marc Prensky, a futurist educator. I'm Marty Wasserman. Visit our website, www.futuretalk.net, and we'll see you next time.